How's everyone doing?
Great.
So good to be here. This is a great crowd for a Saturday morning. Appreciate everyone coming down and wanting to get out here and be passionate about electing Democrats all over the state. We need more because we're right and they're wrong. Only 99.9% of the time. I'm sure, I know everyone in here has got different reasons for being here. I will thank everyone. I know there's a lot of things you could be out doing. It takes a lot to sacrifice your Saturday morning and come out here and learn about democratic politics and campaigning and best practices and things like that. And I know that a lot of folks in here are going to have different things that they want to get out of this. And I hope that this will be a nice base layering on all the education and politics that you'll get over the coming months. So this is just a 12-hour presentation. My expertise has always been in communications. Having been around political campaigns and at the party for 3 years, I've got some understanding of the other operations as well. So if you have questions as we go along, something doesn't make sense, I'm talking in French, just throw your hand up or shout at me. Say, hey, could you pump the brakes and let's go through that a little bit more or kind of flesh that out a tad. I'm happy to do all of that. I like to talk in terms of the kitchen table. So, if you wouldn't have this conversation over a kitchen table, it's probably not worth having with a voter because people think in terms of the kitchen table. If you're going to have that conversation at home, that's a conversation you could have with the voter. If you start talking about, in-depth policies, all of a sudden things go, and voters don't really want to hear that anyway. But I'm already getting ahead of myself. So this is the landscape and a message training. This is hopefully going to be interactive. Well, I'm going to make it interactive. I'm counting on you all to be interactive back. But now with messaging exercises, hello, great deal. Right now, I would say in Tennessee and throughout the United States, people are pretty disillusioned with the political process. They're very frustrated by what's happening in Congress nationally. They're frustrated that our unemployment rate is sky high here in Tennessee. They're frustrated by what looks like back scratching from the governor to his old business partners. At any rate, there's a lot of frustration, and it's really a choice straight out of the Wizard of Oz. You've got the Tea Partiers, if I only had a brain. You've got the fiscal conservatives, if I only had a heart. And you've got Democrats, if I only had the nerve, the courage. So there's a reason why the fastest growing political affiliation in America and Tennessee is unaffiliated. That's the reason, because all of these are frustrating to everyone. You've got to keep that in mind, that people are frustrated about politics and politicians. And you've also got to keep in mind that we need the courage. So how do we get back to Tennessee? Back to the Tennessee many grew up with and many want and vision for the future. So before we start diving into the details, it's helpful to kind of understand the climate here. And so I've taken a look at a lot of polling over the last couple of years. It's all pretty consistent that I see. This frustration always comes through, but right now, top of mind, this is actually just from December. This isn't my own polling. This is the Vanderbilt University's statewide poll, 1,000 Tennesseans, 800 registered voters. The top two priorities of state government should be 48% you see the economy, and 17% is health care. Those are the top two. Traditionally, in polls past, healthcare and education would flip-flop. I mean, they're always a distant second to jobs and the economy, but they're always close. So when you're thinking about what voters envision their priorities to be, it's jobs and the economy, education and healthcare, and then usually 4 is a wild card, but taxes ended up being a close fourth in most of the polling that I see. So this is another kind of thing that came out of the Vanderbilt poll that is very important to recognize for our purposes. The Affordable Care Act, not popular in Tennessee, not surprising, but Medicaid expansion, paid for by the Affordable Care Act, very popular in Tennessee. A complete flip-flop. And we don't have to necessarily dive into the details of why that is, but the base is that Tennesseans of all political stripes, at least some of all political stripes, believe that health care should be available to every hard-working Tennessean. That's a no-brainer for so many Tennesseans and so many Americans. No Tennessean should be forced into financial ruin because somebody got sick or into an accident. So this is actually the breakdown on that Medicaid expansion, and healthcare being such a big issue. It's interesting to see these. Obviously, Democrats lead the way in expanding Medicaid. Independents are pretty high on that as well. 64% is nothing to sneeze at. And Republicans and Tea Party, self-identified Tea Partiers, also more than a third in Tennessee support expanding Medicaid. So this is polling from a little bit longer ago, 2012. But you're going to see a similar kind of vibe here. Economy, education, taxes, healthcare. Those are almost always the top 4, with economy and jobs almost always leading the way. So, unfortunately, voters do not discern a difference between the parties when it comes to all the problems coming out of Washington or Nashville. All politicians get painted with the same broad frustration stripe. So, and I would say that a lot of times this is wrongly placed, but they're blaming the partisanship on both parties. Now, as Democrats who are paying attention to the news and following what's happening in Washington, we know that the obstructionist party, the extreme party, is not the Democrats in Congress. It's the Tea Party in Congress, which has been gumming up legislation, been more obstructionist than any Congress in the history of Congresses. However, that doesn't mean anything to the voters. They believe it's just too much partisanship and everybody's guilty. And I'm not saying Democrats are never guilty of it. I'm just saying, as of late, it's the other guys. So, it's important to know that any sign of party labels, especially when you're running as yourself, can hurt your message. Whether you're calling out Republicans or whether you're calling out Democrats, it doesn't really matter. It can hurt your message. Because you think about it in terms of think about it in terms of traffic lights. If someone puts out if someone says, well, I think Democrats are great, that's going to trigger a traffic light in a lot of people's minds. Democrat, well, no, I'm going to get a caution light, or maybe a red, or maybe a tomato to throw at them. And the same goes for independents and Democrats too. I mean, Republican will trigger different signals in ours as well. So we always want to be careful of using party labels too much. Now, let me take a step back and say, I'm Brandon Putbreeze, and I'm a Democrat through and through. And I know you all are all Democrats as well, or you wouldn't be here. So don't be afraid to say who you are, but I'm saying be cautious in how you apply it to political messaging. One of the things actually that I really like about Chattanooga's current mayor, he's that first commercial he did that, "Hi, I'm Andy Burke and I'm a Democrat." That was really great, because one of the things that Democrats get faulted for all the time is not having the courage and conviction of their beliefs. So you can't say, "Well, I'm independent," and run as a Democrat, because that's going to toast you every time. People they won't believe you. You've got to be genuine. You've got to be real. But as you're trying to win an argument, I'm just saying labels aren't always helpful. So how do we break through to the electorate right now? We rise above the rancor and emphasize results. So when you're talking about your opponent, name names, not party. This is very important, because elections are about choices. You've got 2 choices or 3 choices, whatever it is. And if you as the candidate or the campaign staff cannot articulate that choice, what can we expect from voters? We have to be able to articulate that choice. And oftentimes that's as easy as saying us versus them, we versus they, ours versus theirs. But that's not necessarily saying, well, these damn Republicans, they're screwing everything up. Call them out by their name. Andy Holt, he's a guy in Upper West Tennessee who's about as miserable as they get for the Republican Party for all the things that he supported. But call him out. Andy Holt's politics are hurting our families. Driving down wages, whatever it is. Keeping our families from getting health care. Andy Holt. So focus on results. Something concrete. We want to raise the minimum wage for working families. That's a concrete vision. That's a result that would have tangible effects in people's lives. A lot of the number one question that advertising and marketers ask before they start a campaign is, what's in it for me? Because that's how voters think, that's how consumers think. What's in it for me? So as you're thinking about what you want to talk about on your campaign, be thinking about how a voter will hear that, because their initial reaction is going to be, what's in it for me? And if it sounds like there's nothing in it for them, there's a good reason why it doesn't sound like they're going to support you. So you have to be careful with that. And also, right now, Tennessee's unemployment rate higher than the national average by a full point. We're seeing the top-down economics festering and hurting Tennesseans in very broad strokes. The jobs aren't coming that Haslam promised, but his special interest buddies are getting everything they ever wanted and more. So it's important to assign blame to someone's policies. You don't necessarily want to appear to be attacking them as their individual capacity, because people will think you're just being mean. But it's fair to say that Haslam has prioritized special interest instead of working families. That's just the facts. I'm going to go back. So, the other piece of how we break through is talking about our democratic values. Because when we talk about our values, they stand up to Republican values and win every single time. So I want to go around the room and people just have kind of shout out democratic values, things you're passionate about, things that drive us as a party. Anybody got any? Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, everybody who wants to work should have a good job and not be underemployed.
Good jobs for people who want to work.
Good public schools.
Good public schools, one of my favorites. Health care, absolutely.
Fair pay.
Fair pay, without a doubt.
Head Start for poverty-level children.
Couldn't agree more. Universal pre-K, well, no,
not
Head
the
Start,
same thing.
Head Start, Head Start for worthy individuals, absolutely.
Equal opportunity for the American dream.
Equal opportunity. That was one of our founding documents. Equality is a really important piece of the democratic vision that all men are created equal. Now they screwed up one word in there because we're all created equal, but it's important that equality reigns true as a North Star. What else?
Safe neighborhoods.
Safe neighborhoods, absolutely.
Separation of church and state.
Absolutely. Sure. What else?
Teaching people not to be scared of unions. Be your friend.
Respecting and lifting up working people. I couldn't agree more. Anybody else? So these are all great democratic values. These are all things that Tennessee needs a big dose of. So when you're thinking about how we talk about our values, there are some words that work better than others. But these here have all been poll tested and managed and rejiggered and all this other stuff. So these are all, you could take all these to the bank in terms of what Democrats stand for. Now these are by no means all of them, but these are a lot of them. When you talk about democratic values, what do we stand for? People who work for a living, the middle class. I can't say the middle class enough, and if I say it 1,000 times today, that still won't be enough. The middle class. People who lost their job through no fault of their own. Rebuilding Tennessee. Small business as the engine of prosperity and jobs. Good American jobs, good American benefits. A hard day's work. Partnership with business. Common sense. Rules of the road. When you're talking about regulation, specifically, rules of the road, or just rules in general, is a great way to not say regulation, which we always get attacked for being the party of regulation. But everyone believes there should be rules that create a fair playing field. Whereas regulation is a word that works against us, rules is a word that works for us. The American dream. The American dream and middle class oftentimes work together because the American dream means something to everybody. And it may mean something a little bit different to everybody, but at its core, it's, well, what is it? What does the American dream mean to all you? Just shout it out. There's no organization. We're Democrats.
Well, we'll be treated fairly.
What?
Own a home.
Owning a home, absolutely.
Equal opportunity for success.
Equal opportunity, yes.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I love it.
Be able to live comfortably after you retire.
Dignity in retirement, without a question.
Kids have an opportunity to go to college.
Opportunity for our kids, education and otherwise, absolutely. And that's why the American dream is such a great thing to talk about in campaigns, because it has such broad meaning, and it encompasses education, secure health care, opportunity for folks who are working hard. Speak of the devil, opportunity for people who work hard and play by the rules. Investing in our future. Investing in our future is just a great phrase to have in any campaign, because everyone generally has some concern about the future. And so investing in our future, whether that be our students, our schools, our roads and bridges, is something that people can relate to oftentimes. And many folks see the correlation between investing in students and schools as a jobs creator as well, creating the conditions for good jobs, and also investing in roads and bridges. Right now, Tennessee has $30 billion, 30 with a B, worth of crumbling roads, bridges, and schools that is just getting deferred and deferred and deferred, and I don't want us to be on the news because we had a bridge fall into a river. I mean, it's disgusting to think that that could happen to us, but I'm telling you, without a real investment in our roads and bridges, problems could arise. Strong families, strong communities, safe communities as well, leadership and effective government. These are broad kind of values. I can't overemphasize the middle class, and I'll give you a little explanation why. Last year, we did a statewide test of voters, and we had a generic Republican and a generic Democrat say the exact same jobs message. That, it was something along the lines of, I'm committed to creating good jobs so every family has an opportunity for XYZ. And so they said, if you heard a Republican say that, where would you approve? And it would, the approval was something around 60%. If you heard a Democrat say that, where would it be? Somewhere around 40%. We lost the exact same jobs message by 20 points just because it was a Republican versus a Democrat. However, when we said the same message about protecting and expanding the middle class, we won that argument as Democrats by 2 points. Now that's not a landslide by any means, but that should inform that if we're just talking about jobs, that's not necessarily a winner. But if we're talking about something bigger, the middle class, protecting working families, that's something that voters in Tennessee trust us more than they trust Republicans. So I cannot emphasize enough the middle class. And I know it takes a little bit of retooling in our brains to say that over and over again, but protecting and expanding the middle class is key for Democratic victory. Because the middle class has all of those same connotations that the American dream does. A good home, a good job, good benefits, opportunity for your kids, secure health care, dignity in retirement. So, remember to talk about the middle class. Over last summer, we had about 25 interns at the Tennessee Democratic Party. And I took them all through this message training. And the first thing I said is I asked them what a Democrat is. And we're going to get into that as well. So I asked them what a Democrat is, a Tennessee Democrat specifically. And everyone had different kind of answers, things that they're passionate about. And then I said, well, what in Tennessee, one of the things that we need is a good answer right off the bat. Because oftentimes people will be asked, well, why are you a Democrat? And then they say, well, I'll get back to you. I've heard that many times. And so a lot of what I was trying to do at the party was untie candidates' tongues, which get gummed up oftentimes, just talking about our values. Whether it's nerves, whether it's first time, there's tons of different reasons. But the key to being successful in messaging is repetition. So one of the pieces that came out of all of our research that we did was, what is a Tennessee Democrat? Someone who shares our values of hard work, opportunity, and fairness. And when you think through those things, those are absolute core Democratic values. We value hard work, we value opportunity, and we absolutely value fairness. And you can plug a lot of our other values into these just core pieces here. Now I even switched that a little bit. I didn't switch up these words, but I even said fighting for the middle class or building a stronger middle class. To me, also encompasses hard work, opportunity, and fairness. So if anyone ever asked you, what's a Tennessee Democrat? You can tell them either someone who's committed to building a stronger middle class or someone who's committed to hard work, opportunity, and fairness. So I personally like committed to building a stronger middle class, but hard work, opportunity, and fairness is great as well. Take those to the bank. If anyone ever asks you what's a Democrat, Tennessee Democrat, you can tell them hard work, opportunity, and fairness. I'm committed to building a stronger middle class. That's about 9 words, but it captures a lot of who we are. What we found in a lot of our message testing was that we've been branded very effectively by the Republicans. Now, what are some of the things that Republicans accuse us of all the time? I'm sure you've heard it from friends, family, and socialism. Oh, yes.
Handouts.
What?
Handouts.
Handouts. Oh, yes.
Spend and tax.
Spend and tax. Yep. What else have we been accused of? Liberal, godless. Yes, godless baby killers. Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. And they're the ones who just cut food stamps for children. Speaking of baby killers.
Bleeding heart look.
Bleeding heart. Yes. Oh, absolutely. What?
Naive.
Naive. Oh, of course. Yes. Against big business. That. Yep. They'll accuse us of that. Anti-business. Absolutely. What else? You've all heard these 100,000 times. And it speaks to how effective Republicans have been over the last 50 years in branding us, that they have drilled these things into us over and over again. Because we all can recite what they think we are. Well, let me ask this. What do we know about them?
Mean-spirited.
Mean, greedy,
Suspicious.
suspicious. Oh. The rich get richer, absolutely.
Narrow-minded.
Yep, narrow-minded. Party of no, anti-worker, yep.
Middle class.
Anti-middle class, yep.
Anti-intellectual.
Absolutely. So there's some of this going on both sides of the aisle.
Some more of this part.
Well, it's important, we all kind of giggle about these things, but it's important to know what they say about us, and it's also important to know what we're going to say about them. And that's not just related to Democrats versus Republicans. If you're in any kind of campaign, any race, you have to know what your core message is as a candidate, and you have to know what your core message is about your opponent too. Because like I said earlier, campaigns are about choices. And if you cannot articulate the choice, how can you expect voters to know what the difference is? It is so critically important to create a contrast. At any rate, so part of why we've been very frustrated in Tennessee is that we've been playing defense for so many years. And when they accuse us of being godless baby killers, our folks get all wound up and tongue-tied and they don't have anything to say. Or when they accuse us of being anti-business, our folks get all tied up and don't know what to say. So not just for Democrats, but for any campaign, you need to present a vision. You need to present a vision for what you want to accomplish, what you believe, and who you are, what your values are, what you stand for. And you've got to know it chapter and verse. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, This can be just a paragraph. But you got to know it by heart. And you got to say it about 100,000 times.
And keep that message consistent.
Absolutely.
You get tired of saying it, but you got a different audience. You got to keep saying it.
Right when you get tired of saying it, keep saying it. Because all the people you talk to, they hadn't heard it. And you'll hear, there'll always be one clown in the room who's going to say, all right, Brenda, I've heard you say this speech about 10 times. But guess what? You're already voting for it. And all the other people hadn't heard it. So don't ever be discouraged. If you say something 1,000 times, don't be discouraged. Say it again. If I had a nickel for every time Barack Obama said protecting or expanding the middle class, I wouldn't be here today. I'd be with Mitt Romney's money down in the Caribbean. Because they were focused like a laser on building a stronger middle class. The Obama campaign was phenomenally message disciplined, and they kept at it. So what is an effective message? Well, one, you have to stand for something. Because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. 2, mean what you say and say it with meaning. Too many campaigns run a poll and then decide, well, I really need to say these things. This is what I need to be about. Well, when you waltz into a room and do all scripted polling, people are going to say to you, is this guy a robot or what's going on here? Because it doesn't sound authentic. One of the core problems candidates have is that they don't trust their heart enough. Democrats trust their brain a lot, which is good, but we don't trust our heart enough. Republicans, on the other hand, they always just speak right from the heart. And whether it's absolute garbage and complete fabrications, it doesn't matter. They say it like they believe it. And usually they do. So it's important to say what you believe and believe it when you say it. And as I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but there's a book that once said this line, without a vision, the people will perish. And it is so true. Whether you're in business, whether it's a campaign, whether it's a nonprofit organization, it really doesn't matter. You've got to have a vision. What do you believe? What do you want to accomplish? If you can't articulate your vision, why would anyone follow you or help you? What are you running for? It is such a basic campaign peg that so many campaigns completely miss. And I don't want any of y'all to be guilty of that. So without a vision, the people will perish. You have to have a vision for what you want to accomplish. So, we're going to talk in terms of values, because anything we say can beat what they're saying. We're going to make it about the middle class, building a stronger middle class, fighting for hard work, opportunity, fairness. And one thing I didn't mention when I talked about middle class earlier is a lot of candidates, both parties, love to talk about, well, I want to create jobs. And you know, that it feels like they should say it because everybody says it. But the issue is jobs are just a number. You know, the Acme Widget Company laid off 500 people. The Acme Squared Company just hired 250 people. These are just numbers. But building a stronger middle class, fighting for the American dream, these are values that include good jobs, but also mean a lot more. And that's part of why we do better when we talk about middle class, because jobs are just a number. Also, earlier, I talked about how people are frustrated with everything. Make sure that they know you've got their back. That was even a campaign slogan for the Obama campaign, that, you know, we got your back, or he's got your back, have his back. You know, there was this whole kind of thing online that played out with that. Making sure that people know that you can relate to their circumstances and that you've got their back is a really important and subtle thing to have. And also, talk in terms of just, you know, plain Jane, like you were talking to your cousin or you're talking to your, you know, uncle or whatever. Because if you start getting wonky, people their brain just turns right off. If they don't want to hear it, or they refuse to hear it. populist messages are the strongest in this economy as well. Because, well, people feel like the rules have been changed against them. In Tennessee, they're right. The rules are changing, and it's not to benefit anyone who's works for a living and collects a paycheck. So, don't be afraid to talk about empowering working people. So I've got about, also, the best defense is a good offense. So for too long, Democrats have been trying to dodge curveballs that have been coming at them, when we are the ones who should be putting Republicans on defense. Why don't they support health care for working people? Why don't they support good wages for working people? Why don't they support smaller class sizes when they send their kids to private schools with 8 kids in every class? Why don't they embrace equality for all Tennesseans, whether it's voting or otherwise? Why don't they support fair taxes? Right now in Tennessee, the wealthiest Tennesseans, the top 1%, pay 2% of their income in state taxes. Working people pay closer to 10% of every dollar they earn. Why is it that lopsided? Why are we not asking the same of the wealthiest Tennesseans that we're asking of the poorest? It makes no sense. We need to put them on defense. So, I am actually going to distribute this presentation to Terry Lee after this. So, you don't have to write down all of these bullet points, but these have all been tested in Tennessee. It's a real populist argument, but what we're looking at is ideas for jobs and growth, okay? The number on the right shows how it tested total with Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. So this one had a 55-point approval. The approval was 55 points better than the disapproval. So for instance, a 12-point message is really good. A 55-point one is off the charts. Now, just reading through some of these, they'll probably make sense as soon as you read them because they're just so common sense. But I'll go through a few. I won't read them all in the interest of keeping you all awake, but I will read a few I like for sure. When our elected officials are voting for or against a bill, they should be consulting their conscience and their constituents, not their campaign contributors. Woo! I want to see the words "Made in America" again. And you could say "Made in Tennessee" again as well. It just blows off the charts. It's time we return to government of, by, and for the people, not government of, bought and paid for by corporations and billionaires. Well, that one feels pretty familiar here in Tennessee. Economic prosperity. Now, this one is so central to a middle-class jobs argument. Economic prosperity depends on a middle class with money in their pockets. Over 300 million people shopping at Target creates a much more vibrant economy than 30,000 people shopping at Tiffany's. And it's just the truth. You can't create a strong economy if people don't have money to spend. Right now, why the American economy is dithering is because nobody's got any money except the people at the top who aren't spending any. Yes, sir?
A study recently that showed there's a direct correlation between the decline in the number of union members and the decline in the fortunes of the middle class. Well, the chart was graphic.
In somewhere around 1965 or 64, when union membership was at its height in America, economic prosperity was also at its height. No question there. As union membership did decline, the graph is really kind of amazing that it follows it almost with a blanket or almost parallel. So it's absolutely right. Good wages, where you've got money in your pocket to spend, a good job, secure health care, guess what? You're going to buy new cars. You're going to refurnish your house. You're going to add on. You're going to take trips. You're going to do things. These are all things that create a stronger economy. But if you spend every last dollar you have and max out your credit card just to feed your kids and keep clothes on their backs and food on the table, guess what? That's not going to create a strong economy, because our economy is based on people creating things and people buying them. And if we don't have the production here to create, and we don't have the money and good jobs to be able to buy these products, our economy is going to suffer. That's what's happening right now. All the wealth, all the money is pooling at the top because of a tax system that has been rigged against working people. So I could go on with a bunch more of these, but I'll just try to pick out a few more that I like.
Randy, could you tell people why that's important? Even if they're running for, not running for Congress or anything.
Yeah.
How that branding, because people are branding the term Democrat, if they're running as a Democrat, why it's important to incorporate this, even if that particular issue doesn't directly involve your campaign platform.
Yeah, it's important to understand. It's important to understand the branding side of this and what we stand for. And let me kind of give you an example. I go into this later, and we'll do it again then. But think about it in this way: we bring good things to life. GE, that's right. That's an old one. You hadn't heard that one forever. Have it your way. Burger King, absolutely. Always fresh. I thought that was Subway. Is that not Subway? Eat fresh. Eat fresh. I screwed it up. If I'd have said eat fresh, I'd have said Subway. The reason it's important for us to know exactly what we're standing for is this is a microcosm. These companies have spent millions of dollars to make sure that consumers have an experience with their brand every single time. We don't have millions of dollars. That is why we need to be disciplined about who we are. So people have a consistent and repetition, have a consistent interaction with democratic values, and the benefit of repetition, so it sinks in. You will not ever hear me say, "Don't say it again," because repetition is key to politics. You have to say it over and over and over again. And that's why it's so, and I'm not saying you need to memorize all of these lines, all of these. You don't have to do that. But it's important to know what you stand for, whether it's on the campaign or whether as a Democrat. Did I get there at all? Or?
Yeah, I think pretty much, it's just that sometimes people get this image of what a Democrat is. If you'll put a couple of those phrases in there, here's who I am, here's what I stand for, even if it doesn't have anything to do with running for the Board of Education or for County Commission, it lets them know what your thought is. I'm for hard work and people making an honest living, for uplifting the middle class. That's where I'm coming from, as opposed to what that may already be in the back of their memory or their mind. What you mentioned a while ago.
Well, if you don't tell people what you stand for, they're going to believe whatever they hear, and your opponent's not going to wait to tell you. Or not going to wait on you to figure out what the heck you stand for. Your opponent's going to say, well, they're just like all the rest of them. Barack Obama, Texas spending, liberal, Muslim, blah, 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 all that crap. And you're going to own it if you don't give them something else to counteract that message. You've got to own your own message. Who's going to tell your story? You are. You're responsible for it. There's no one else who's going to do it for you. Nobody. So you got to have a story. You got to know your story backwards and forwards, and you got to talk about it every single time. You got to know your vision and values every single time and talk about it consistently and with repetition and passion. Be passionate about what you believe. There's nothing wrong with passion. John Boehner cries all the time. Cries so much he ruined the leather. So yes, no one else is going to tell your story. So that is why it is key to know what we stand for. A couple more here that I like. Most of us don't expect our elected officials to do everything right, but we do expect them to do right by us, starting with protecting the middle class. In good times and bad, working middle-class families should be able to count on a good public education for our kids, health care for our families, and dignity in our old age. I mean, that runs the gamut from birth to death. I mean, it's just good. I like this one here too. If anyone's ever read any of the communications I ever sent out from the Tennessee Democratic Party, you'll know that I use this one on many, many occasions. You can't have a vibrant economy without a vibrant middle class, because someone's got to build things and someone's got to buy them. I said a variation of that just 2 minutes ago. I didn't even look at it. But that's just because I've been using these things for so long, it becomes second nature after you really kind of zone in on your values. Americans should be working their way into the middle class, not falling out of it. And actually, to gentleman's point over here, talking about anti-worker Republicans, Tennesseans are pro-labor when you talk about it in terms of workers. Now, a lot of folks they think, what, Tennessee's pro-labor? How could that be? But, I mean, pro-labor by a lot. It's a populist message. People feel like the rules have been changed to work against them. So they are very open to a pro-worker message if we are willing to give it to them. Whether it's time to restore some balance between management and working people, starting with making sure working people have a voice and a seat at the table again. Well, heck, that polled 26 points higher than the Republican opposition message. But that is about as pro-labor as you get. A voice and a seat at the table again. Heck yes. Every time a CEO cuts himself a bonus check for $25 million, he's cutting the paychecks of 2,500 workers by $10,000 apiece. If that isn't un-American, I don't know what is. I'll just give you a little news flash. I don't know if anybody pays attention to the Wall Street stuff, but corporate profits and CEO bonuses are the highest they've ever been in the history of America. Worker pay, flat for 40 years. We're falling behind when you take into account for the cost of inflation and the cost of consumer goods. This is why. That money's going someplace. It just ain't trickling down like they promised 30 years ago. Yes, sir.
If that top statement's true, and I don't know that I believe that, but if that's true, then as a Democrat running, we ought to be able to use the word blue collar in our message, but the times I've ran in the past, people have advised me not to use the term blue collar.
Oh, well, and here's the thing. Campaign consultants will take your money and not ever really...
These aren't consultants.
Okay.
These are friends that have been involved in it a lot longer than I have.
Okay.
I guess my question is, how do you feel about the term blue collar?
I like the term blue collar. I got nothing wrong with that. Hey, I think about it in terms of if I was going to start a campaign today, I would sit down with a notepad just like this, and I would write down what are the things that I am most passionate about. And if it's a phrase or a word that identifies with who I am, I'm probably going to use it. So long as it's not, an offensive word or something. I'm not going to put an F-bomb in my campaign literature. Yes, sir?
Would that not depend on the audience that you're addressing?
Well, yeah, you always have to be aware of your audience as well. I mean, absolutely. I mean, blue collar may go off the charts in some places, and it may fall flat or other places. But talking about working people in general, I'd say is a good thing. And and the other piece of it is, if it's something that resonates with who you are, then I would always say go more towards the genuine McCoy of who you are, because that comes through. If people feel like your whole shtick is scripted and that they feel like you're being phony, that's going to come through instantaneously. You all have met a phony politician before, right? Raise your hand if you haven't. Oh, you haven't? Yeah, oh. Well, here, raise your hand if you met a phony politician before. Yeah, exactly. You can't swing a dead cat in Tennessee without hitting one.
Tell us how you would phrase the counter to, do you favor or oppose right to work?
So when people ask that question, most of the time they are looking to try to trip you up. They are trying to trip you up. So what you do? The question was, do you favor right to work laws here in Tennessee? Right to work is essentially the right to work for less. It makes it harder to organize here in Tennessee. But it's all over the South specifically. We have a long history of keeping workers' wages low. So what I would say is don't answer the question. Answer the question you wished you'd been asked. Because guess what? There's no rule that you've got to be. If someone's just trying to trip you up, there's no rule that says you've got to give. Tell them where your values are. I think the right to negotiate a fair wage and good work conditions is universal. Just leave it at that. You know, oftentimes I encourage people not to be dodgy, but just answer the question that they wish they were asked. And here's the other piece. Right to work laws. You know how many people know what right to work laws are? Almost zip. Zippo. You know, like it's like that thing that we saw earlier. The Affordable Care Act polls in the toilet, and Medicaid expansion polls on the roof. Well, it's time to restore some balance between management and working people, starting with making sure working people have a voice and seat at the table. You know what? You don't owe them an answer on that. And here's the.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, there are some classic dodges as well, like. Oh, yeah, I'm really glad you I know a lot of people are concerned about that as well. You know, there are a lot of dodges. I don't necessarily embrace dodges, but they can be. They do have their place. You had a question back here?
Yeah, would you say something along the lines of, I'm for what's best for expansion and expanding the middle class?
Yeah. I mean, you could say, I want to learn more about that, but generally speaking, I'm for what's going to create a stronger middle class. I mean, that would be a great answer. If it creates and I've even told people, if it creates a stronger middle class, I'm for it. And if it doesn't, I'm against it. You know, it's, with a lot of questions candidates get on the fly. For instance, Gloria Johnson, who's a state representative in Knoxville, I work with her quite a bit. And she said to me that somebody had, this was about a year ago when the legislature was arguing about Agenda 21. Does anyone here know what Agenda 21 is or has ever heard of it? Okay, for about 5 people. Agenda 21. Yeah, exactly. Agenda 21 is some arcane United Nations policy that has to do with land management, and it's has nothing to do with anything we're working on in Tennessee. And she got about 200 emails about this Agenda 21. She calls me. She said, Brandon, what the heck is this Agenda 21 stuff? And I said, that's a bunch of Tea Party crap. Don't answer it. So that is to say that people are going to come up and ask you about federal, I mean, if you're running for county clerk, people are going to come up and ask you about things the president said, because there's a disconnect, and they don't understand that it's not all in the same bucket. So, I mean, this is just a long way of saying it's okay to not know, and it's okay to just say, I'll get back to you as well, you know, as a very polite way to say, that sounds interesting, but I'd like to learn more, if you legitimately don't know, or if it's something that you do know all about, but you don't want to just give them the line, just stick with your values. You know, I believe working people deserve a voice, and leave it at that. Working people do deserve a voice. So, as I said, I'm going to get all of these to you. I love this top one. What should our priorities be here? It's time millionaires and corporations like GE and Bank of America, which didn't pay a dime in taxes, pay their fair share like the rest of us, so we can rebuild our roads, our schools, and our middle class. Thing pulls off the charts. Completely completely in line with what Democrats stand for. And here's another great one here. Republicans always are saying, "Oh, we've got to cut the size of government to create jobs." Like somehow they've created this fallacy that if you eliminate government jobs, it's going to create jobs elsewhere. It's an absolute fallacy, straw man argument. But they've been getting away with it for a while now. At any rate, but the best way to reduce the deficit and pay off the debt eventually will be to put Americans back to work. That's a better jobs argument than anything Republicans have said, and polling actually fleshed that out. The best way to reduce the deficit is to put Americans back to work, because when more Americans are working, more Americans are paying taxes. It is just that simple. So investing in people is an investment in our economy and also in paying off our debt and deficit. The best way to solve our budget problems is to put people back to work. Same kind of thing there.
That's scored at 10, that's on the low end, right?
Yeah, 10 is still good. I mean, it's still a winning message, but obviously they can't all be 42s and 50s, but 10 is still good. I mean, it's on the low end of good, but it's still good.
I have a couple of questions that I get asked a lot by
Fire away.
conservatives. Why should we be allowing immigrants to just have a free public school, and they're sucking the life out of our economy, and they're dependent, and we're wasting money helping them? What's the quick reply to that one?
I say immigration is a jobs creator.
Read the question.
The question, generally speaking, was that why should we be tolerant of immigrants here who are draining our public services and being a general hindrance on the good people of Tennessee? Number one, big business across the nation supports immigration reform because they know immigration is a jobs creator. In Georgia, there's an interesting story that actually happened here. It has the added benefit of being true. In Georgia, after they passed strict immigration rules, fruit started shriveling up and withering away in the fields because there was no one to pick the produce. Fruit and vegetables just withering up in the fields. That cost Georgia farmers millions, maybe their economy billions of dollars. The point is, a lot of times when people ask you a question, you've got to flip it back on them in a way that they want to hear. Like a jobs initiative is probably something these conservatives would be receptive to. Well, we need to create jobs. Well, immigration reform is a huge jobs creator.
How?
Well, because when people come here and work, they spend money in our communities. It's been happening for 200 years here in America. Give us your poor, your weak, your huddled masses. We're the land of opportunity. We're all a nation of immigrants. I mean, I think all of these things can be brought into an immigration argument. But right now, specifically in America, you've got highly qualified graduates from foreign countries, India, China, Europe, all over the place, who were educated in American colleges and want to work in America at technological jobs, engineering firms, and things like that, who cannot stay because of our immigration system is so screwed up. These are people who would be adding to our economy instantaneously because they were educated here, have the skills that our companies need, but can't stay because our immigration reform is because our immigration system is so broken. So when the number one thing I like to say to conservatives when they start complaining about immigrants is that we are a nation of immigrants, and immigration will kick our economy into high gear if we can get it right. So, that one thing I would say. Or I might just give them this one here.
Do you know how many people come in on working visas that work in Disneyland, that work, where they just had their convention up in Michigan at the UP, where they normally go on Mackinac Island, and all these workers were Jamaicans brought in for less than minimum wage, working visas.
At Disney World?
At Disney World, but also at the Republican meeting that they just...
That's really interesting. I'll have to learn about that. No, just steal it. No, I had never heard that.
With respect to immigration, that's been tested. There's a 3-volume thing called Voting in America, and they have a whole chapter dedicated to immigration. And one of the big things in polling is that people want fairness. And so they want to know that the borders are secure, that people are documented, and that there's fairness in following those rules. And so I think you have to incorporate that. If you want me to send it to you.
Yeah, there is a 3 kind of part test. I don't think I have it in here on immigration specifically, but I might have it in one of the later slides where there is pay a penalty, learn English, and follow the rules or something along that lines. There's been a poll testing kind of mess with it. I tend to stay away from that and just kind of stick to the jobs argument. But it's if you're getting into a deeper discussion on immigration, it's absolutely important to do the homework, just like you're saying.
Yeah, but it's hard to say that it's a jobs issue when the folks who don't have jobs look out at the people that got the contract to fix our local roads, and it's...
Oh, well, it's an absolute jobs issue because the people who fix those roads go shop at the restaurants and at our stores, and people got to spend the money they make, and there's a lot of barbers, haircuts. There's a lot. I mean, it's a big picture, and I understand that a lot of times you get into an argument with some people, and they're not going to be. They just want to argue with you. They didn't even get into it because they wanted to be educated about anything. They just brought it up because they wanted to argue with you. So sometimes you have to know when it's time to cut line too.
Okay, if you like movies, just go to the local store and buy A Day Without a Mexican. That's a documentary. And you see what happens when you take a huge population out of California, Texas, and say, and I see he mentioned Georgia. You don't have a huge sucking sound pulling all Americans down to work in the fields because they ain't going there. You just got to rid of the people that pick the food, that did the job. And this happened also in Morrison. No, Tennessee.
Let's go ahead and get back to the...
Yeah, absolutely. So we also did some Tennessee-specific testing on some Democratic initiatives. A lot of these are related to legislation that has come up in Tennessee or will come up again. This one actually had, I believe, been put into law already was sponsored by now Mayor Andy Burke. It's time we put Tennessee first by giving Tennessee companies the first crack at all state and local contracts so our tax dollars create jobs here, not China and India. That Tennessee First, Republicans have voted against it every time Democrats have put it up in the State House. If we want our kids and grandkids to have a chance, we shouldn't be putting them in crumbling, overcrowded classrooms and cutting Hope Lottery scholarships that have allowed so many hardworking kids to go to college. Well, that's absolutely true. Republicans put forward a bill to cut the Hope Lottery scholarship, which would have, and actually they did reduce the amount of hours that you could, so some kids have already been cut out of the Hope Lottery scholarship. As for overcrowded classrooms, Haslam in 2012 put forward a plan to increase the size of public school classrooms, even though he went to a very small classroom private school. And his idea was so he could create some sort of merit pay for teachers. Well, We should do merit pay for teachers right when we do merit pay for politicians. It's hard to believe so many state lawmakers in Nashville voted to end Medicare in Tennessee. That's absolutely true. They did. The health care compact, that's kind of a wonky thing, but this one that's going to come up here again this year, big time, with vouchers are going to be a hot topic in Nashville again. We're not going to improve education in the state when our lawmakers divert millions in taxpayer dollars to an out-of-state corporation co-funded by a convicted felon to stream lessons to children over the internet. That's actually the Virtual Academy. I don't know if any of you have all learned about the Virtual Academy, but we're sending millions to a corporation in Virginia. So anyway, we just got some more kind of Tennessee-specific talking points that I'll be happy to share with everybody. I won't read through all of them here now. But, okay, so some conclusions from our study that we did was repetition is the key to establishing the brand of a Tennessee Democrat. What does the Tennessee Democrat stand for? Building a stronger middle class. You can all say it with me. What does the Tennessee Democrat stand for? Building a stronger middle class. One more time. Building a stronger middle class. You can't go wrong if that's your answer when someone asks what a Tennessee Democrat is. Tennesseans are with us on our values when we talk about them. That's the key. We've got to talk about them, and they are with us. And we win strongly with swing voters. Virtually every demographic. And GOP ideas lose steam when they hear a contrasting Democratic message, which is so important and also speaks to why Democrats have been getting their butts handed to them in Tennessee for the last 30 years, is because we've had too many Democrats who were parroting Republican policies. So it's like Harry Truman said about 60 years ago, that if voters have the choice between a Republican and a Democrat who acts like a Republican, they're going to choose the real thing. So back to getting the Wizard of Oz here. The importance of courage in your message. Mean what you say, believe what you say, and say it again. So before we do a workshop, we're going to do a fun little workshop here. I think this would be a good time to run to the restroom, or if we're set up where we could eat. This is a real natural breaking point for me.
Is this a good point to break? Okay.
Great. Well, that's chapter 1. I'm glad everyone's still awake. I guess I'm loud enough so you couldn't really fall asleep. Questions from the previous section? Now's the time to go ahead and ask them. I'm going to hang out for a while as well, so I'm happy to answer any questions one-on-one. But if anyone has any questions that they feel would be a benefit to the group, please feel free.
If we got you backing as a candidate for governor, given the strength of your message and how party building that would be across, would you consider, and what would be your minimum to run for governor?
The question was, will I run for governor? Does this group even want me to run for governor? I would, I'd have to, well, the thing about money with this governor's race, and I don't know how, Haslam gets a free pass on way too much in Nashville. He gets an absolute free pass for the destruction that he and the Republican majority has done in this state over just the very short time that they've had control is almost immeasurable. We've been set back in so many ways and shapes and forms that it's hard to sum up succinctly. Now, do I think that we need a clear democratic vision where we are actually lifting wages, not driving them down, where we're actually creating good-paying jobs in Tennessee, not shipping them to Virginia and Chicago, or handing them to our buddies who we're invested heavily with. Yes, I absolutely think we need that vision in Tennessee. We need a 21st century, we need a future here, a 21st century vision for what our state could become. And Haslam is very content with the good old boy system where he gets his back scratched by the special interests and then he turns around and scratches theirs. There is a better way to do it. Whether or not I'm the right candidate to deliver that punch to him, I don't know. I'd never have enough money. No candidate ever would. He's the first billionaire governor in Tennessee history that I'm aware of. It's kind of interesting that the first billionaire governor in Tennessee is also the first one to cut taxes for billionaires and millionaires, but not a surprise, but an interesting coincidence.
The one with the money.
Hmm?
Who won in California, Jerry Brown or the one with the well-heeled back?
Oh, no, and I'm not saying money makes all the difference in the world, but certainly there are more considerations. I'd have to ask work. Hey, can I get off for the next 8 months? Anyway, well, we'll maybe talk about that more. But I'm very flattered. I'm happy to help anyone who wants to run for governor. I don't know that I am that lamb today. So, any other questions? Hey, we have a city councilman here who just came to join us. Hey, Chris, how are you? Yes, sir.
I have a question tagging along on that question.
Okay.
How many people here ordinarily will decide to go for Congress?
Thank
He's
you
willing
for
to
that.
put you out there.
All right. Any other questions before we?
Randy, you should take a vote on this. I think Andy said that. Somebody said that. Everybody, who wants Mary to raise run for Congress, raise your hand.
Yeah. Well, hey, the support's here.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Hey, the straw poll's in. Anything else for any questions or thoughts from the previous slides that anyone's burning on their minds?
What we discussed a minute ago, because it's sort of, and you might be getting into it, I can't
Yep.
recall, the stump speech thing and targeting and having 3 or 4 of them, that
Yep.
kind of thing. I guess that ties into what you're going to do.
Yeah, it certainly does. Some of the things that Stuart and I talked about just in the interim were, when you're out there talking with voters, certainly make sure that your message is not policy driven. Actually, that was something that came up right away. As Democrats, we tend to want to roll out a white paper, here is the scientific reasons why you should support this policy, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, double H here, subparagraph, ellipses, blah, 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 blah. So we tend to really egghead our stuff. And I would say on a campaign, it's not that we don't want our message to be intelligent. We do. We're right on the issues. We are the party of science, for goodness sakes. We believe in critical thinking, and we believe in problem solving. This is who we are as Democrats. However, I would say that we need to increase the emotional intelligence of our message. Republicans are very good at speaking, as I said earlier, straight from the heart. Whether they're right or wrong, they'll just speak straight from the heart. And it may be garbage, but they will speak straight from the heart. So we need to do a better job of increasing the emotional intelligence of our arguments and our message. That's not necessarily an indictment on having a smart, educated message, but it does say that we do need to increase the emotional intelligence because people listen with their heart before they hear it with their head. And if you don't believe that, find a very passionate Democrat and just talk for a little while. You'll hear their heart speaks first and their head follows. I'm the exact same way, and most voters are the exact same way. Now, that's not, I'm talking broad strokes here. It's not guaranteed, but for most cases, we need to speak more intelligently from our heart, if you will. So, and then the other thing was tailoring your message. This is really key. you should be saying the same thing to the neighborhood association that you're saying to the Chamber of Commerce, that you're saying when you're knocking doors, that you're saying to the women's group. However, you should tailor that message to each group, okay? So your issues and your platform should be the same, so you're not getting discombobulated here. But you should take some care in tailoring that message to the group you're presenting to. You'll have different experiences in your life that will relate better to a business group than you might do just generally knocking doors in a neighborhood. So be mindful of the group that you're presenting to. Don't change who you are, and don't change what your campaign stands for, but do be mindful of who the audience is. And don't be afraid to tailor the message specifically to them. And I appreciate you bringing that point up, because it is a good one. So this next part is more of a workshop. Pardon me, a little cough there. So effective messaging. As the first hour we went through, speak to values and emotion. Talking about building a stronger middle class. Middle class is our values, hard work, opportunity, and fairness as our values. Make it clear, concise, and contrasting. Clear, concise, and contrasting. Clear, so people know exactly what you stand for. Concise, make it short, because people have very short attention span. Think houseflies, there's hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of ways people are interacting with media and hearing different messages, whether it's radio, TV, cell phone text messages, cell phone, internet, computer, television. You go right on down the line. There's 100 different ways to receive a message, and everyone is competing for that bandwidth in our brains. So it's got to be concise and clear, and contrasting is always good because, like I said, elections are about choices. And if you don't present what the choice is to voters, they'll never know it. So you have to tell them what the choice is. And define it on your terms. Here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it, and here's why I'm better than the other person. I mean, that is cut and dry a campaign message. Here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it, here's why I'm better than the other guy or gal. And not policy driven. Like I said, we don't want to have those, my 27-point job creation bill ideas, that sort of thing. People are going to fall asleep after line 2. Always think in terms of threes too. If you do have a jobs plan, think in terms of threes. Threes are really digestible. There's actually been a lot of study of the brain that humans really digest things in threes better than in any other number. So
One thing too, that's so funny. Chris, give me your 3 points when you were running, 3 people heard in their sleep.
I bet the Waldorfs can tell you what they are. Safe streets, good jobs, strong neighborhoods.
That's what he means by concise, to the point, 3.
bingo. It's like he's been to a campaign training before. Too kind. So, messaging do's. Do know your message. Whether you are a door knocker for a city council campaign, county clerk campaign, or a presidential campaign, there is going to be a core message that you are going to want to present to voters. Know your message. And this can be straight memorization. It doesn't have to be a lot. Chris just said 6 words was his core campaign message, and it doesn't have to be more than 6 words. It doesn't have to be. It could be longer than that. It doesn't have to be though. So know your message. Know whatever it is, because that is going to be so key whether you're at the top of the campaign or one of the very bottom. Everyone should be speaking from the same playbook. Repeat your message over and over and over again. And right when you think you've said it too much, keep frickin' saying it. Don't let up. Repeat your message. I can't emphasize that enough. Do use sound bites. Chris, what was yours again?
Safe streets, good jobs, strong neighborhoods.
Safe street, good job, strong neighborhood. Those are great little sound bites. Do speak calmly and passionately. As I've been trying to do all today, normally I'm not as calm as I've been today, but I always try to be passionate. So be passionate, but be calm. You don't want to have a Howard Dean yowl moment. Yow! Do look directly at the people you're talking to. I know in some cultures, they're mindful of staring directly at people, but in campaigns, the direct eye contact is a positive thing. It's a positive interaction with someone. It's a interpersonal body language cue that helps you connect with someone, and it's something you should absolutely do when you're delivering message. And I mentioned this earlier. Do answer the questions you wish you were asked. If someone asked you a question about something that has nothing to do with your campaign, tell them instead about your campaign or the campaign you're helping out on. People will accuse you of being dodgy. Who cares? If you don't tell your story, no one else will. And if you go off, start talking about something that is completely unrelated to your campaign, that's on you. That's on you. You have a job as a candidate or as a member of a candidate's team, you have a job to do. Drive our message. The message that's going to get us elected to win. So, that's your job. Your job is not to answer questions about Agenda 21 UN resolutions because that has nothing to do with this campaign. Now, there's polite ways to do it, and we discussed a little bit of that earlier, but we'll get into that a little bit after these slides. So do answer the questions you wish you were asked. It is your job to tell the story of your campaign. Messaging don'ts. Don't ever lie. It's not worth it because I can't keep track of anything, so I would definitely step in a big pile of doo-doo if I did. Don't assume you're off the record. There's really no reason.
That's the most important.
So, what was pretty interesting in the presidential campaign, Barack Obama did a closed-door interview, or maybe it was a phone interview, with a newspaper in Iowa, I think the Des Moines Register. And it was supposed to be an off-the-record interview. And or that the transcript wasn't going to get released, or something to that effect. The transcript was leaked by the paper, and what was really interesting about it was that there was nothing that he said that was any different than what he says all the time. So in reality, there's no reason to have off-the-record conversations because as a candidate or someone on a campaign team, you should never be saying anything to anyone that you wouldn't just say as a part of your regular campaign. That is how to keep yourself genuine and real on a campaign, is just say the exact same thing that you would say to this group, even if you're talking in a private conversation. I know that some people will say, well, you can loosen up, but especially with reporters, don't ever assume you're off the record, even if they say so. Just, talk like you were talking on your campaign. Talk about what your campaign stands for, and so on. Don't be afraid to repeat yourself. So many candidates start to get bored with themselves, and it's important to keep to the message. It is so critically important to keep to what your core message is because, like I said, no one else is going to tell your story for you, and the only way you create an echo chamber is by continuing to say the same thing over and over again. Now you can switch up the ways you're saying it or the groups you're saying it to and tailor it a little bit differently, switch it a tad, but the core message should be the same. And once people start coming up to you and saying, oh man, I think you're starting to repeat yourself. You can take that as a high five, a pat on the back, and that is a compliment in a campaign. It sounds like you're repeating. Good! That is exactly what you want to hear.
And you remember what I said before. That's what's important. You heard it before.
Quick little story. Former Governor Ned McWhorter, this goes to repeating yourself here. Former Governor Ned McWhorter paid a bunch of money for a statewide advertising campaign where he had TV commercials up everywhere. And he was up at the country store in Dresden, and he saw an old-timer sitting at the front of the country store. And the old-timer said to him, "Ned, I saw you on TV." And Ned paid a lot of money for all these commercials. Said, "Well, what did you think about what I said?" And the guy said, "Well, I don't know what you said, but you look good." So, I mean, it goes to say that, you got to say this stuff over and over and over again for it to sink in. Because a lot of times people are just looking. Is it a confident presentation? Is it, does this person, do I think that I could give them the keys and the responsibility to run my government? It's, it's almost an unspoken thing. The words aren't always as important as what we think they are. The words are important, don't get me wrong. As a messaging guy, I do believe the words are important and your values are important. But presentation and physical cues, physical messaging can be just as important. Anyway, so yeah, don't answer questions if you're unsure. That's just, there's no reason, if you don't know what some arcane UN policy is or some old law in Tennessee code that's been around for 150 years, don't feel like you got to answer it. And frankly, there's no reason anyone would ever know everything there is to know about any one topic. And a lot of times you're going to get questions that are related to federal government versus some different city even, so don't feel bad for not knowing an answer. Just make sure people, if it sounds like something you should know about, tell them that you'd like them to send you information or help get you learned. Don't get angry. That's a common sense one. Don't feel like you have to fill in the silence. There is, only on radio is silence a bad thing. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and you have delivered your campaign message, shut up. Just stop talking. Because silence can be our friend on a campaign. Once you've finished what you have to say, let someone else talk. And they will fill the silence. And you can learn a lot more listening when you're on a campaign than you can when you're talking. There is this feeling that we have to just keep talking through the silence. But don't be afraid to just close your mouth and listen. After you've given your message, don't be afraid to just listen. Don't make it a policy detailed debate. We covered that a little bit, but it's worth repeating. Oh, so here is some of these message discipline. Repeat. Don't make it a policy debate. So to my point about repeating, like a good neighbor.
State Farm.
Yeah, exactly. Have it your, yeah. The best part of waking up is, oh, yeah, always. I had that one wrong even in my thing here. All right, so a message triangle. A message triangle. This is what everyone will be doing today. And we're all going to be putting on our campaign hats, and we're going to do a message triangle. This is the essence of a campaign message. Now, we want to be able to say our message in 27 words, 9 seconds, and 3 points. 27 words or less, actually. This is actually more than 27 words. I counted it out last night. I couldn't even do my own task correctly. But But these are just some things that I put on there. So think about a message triangle as something that you can pivot. So if I'm talking about safe streets, good jobs, and strong neighborhoods, or is that right? Did I have that right?
Safe streets, good jobs.
Yeah. Okay. So now whenever I'm having a conversation, I can pivot to the other one. So we start off talking about where we're running to make sure that we've got safe streets, strong jobs, and safe neighborhoods. So if someone comes at you with a different question, you go back right into your talking points and don't ever leave them. It's a tough discipline to get, but once you start working it, it becomes less foreign. And it's something that absolutely takes verbal practice. It's not something that you can just kind of read your talking points and feel like, oh, okay, I'm ready. You really have to practice it with someone who is kind of posing as a voter, just asking natural questions. So my personal message triangle, if I were to run against Haslam, well, I'm not promising anything, would be something along these lines, I think. I don't know. Expand the middle class by investing in people and students. Restore fairness for working families by standing up to special interests and big money. And build stronger neighborhoods by cutting the school-to-prison pipeline. Now, you can start any way and go back, forward. They all work together pretty well, I think. And so if you feel like you're going off into a rabbit hole, you just come right back to, well, this campaign is about restoring fairness for working families and holding special interests and big money accountable. This campaign is about expanding the middle class or ending the school-to-prison pipeline. So just make sure that you can come back to your core points. If it ever feels like it's spinning out of control, get yourself grounded by going back to what you believe are your core campaign notes. So here's where the fun part starts. Everyone, find a buddy, and we're going to do your campaign. Pair up. If you want me to assign a partner to you, I will do that as well. But I would say everyone can make friends. Either in groups of 2 or 3, we're going to come up with campaign slogans for the congressional candidate, one in the group, or the whoever the fake congressional candidate is in your district.
Oh, you want a congressional campaign?
Yes, yeah. This will be a fake congressional campaign. Well, you can do it for yourself.